Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Guys.
Okay.
It's Boxing Day, the day this comes out. So I don't
The
actually know what
frick
that
is
means.
Boxing Day?
I don't know. I was just gonna say that. Is it like a Canadian thing? Is it
I'm pretty
weird?
sure it's a European, like it's a UK thing,
All
European
right.
thing. I don't think it's a Canadian thing.
Googling. In true fashion, we started the podcast mid-sentence because we were excited and we were talking about things that you guys probably want to hear. What is Boxing Day? Okay. It is the second day of Christmastide. The fuck does that mean? It was once, it was once a day to donate gifts to those in need, but it has evolved to become a part of Christmas festivities, with many people choosing to shop for deals. I'm not going shopping the day after Christmas. It originated in the UK, and now it's celebrated everywhere that they took over back in the day. Commonwealth nations.
I thought that
Um,
was Black Friday. That's what that is. With second
for
take Cyber
shopping.
Monday. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, yay. Happy Boxing Day. If you're out there shopping and listening to us, you're crazy. Um, I used to love going to the mall the day after Christmas, though, but it was like, because I'd have like arms full of returns and be like, I can't wait to go return all of this and buy the stuff I wanted. But the reason we're excited to talk to you guys is because by the time you hear this, it will have been 1 week since the new division with the NPC was announced, and now we have the fit model division. And honestly, what I think is kind of cool is the idea of the pro cards, where now you would be a professional fit model as opposed to a professional bikini competitor. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, since like when I would talk to people about being a bikini competitor, they would ask me about things like Hooters girls. And I was like, no, that's not what it is. So, um,
I mean, there are definitely some, like Janet Leigh used to be employed by Hooters.
hey,
Did you not know
no
that?
hate on Hooters.
Yeah.
I literally considered getting a job there like while I was in the Navy because I was like, I bet I could make some damn good tips. And then life just got busy. So no hate on Hooters girls. It's
They
just,
wouldn't let me wait tables there.
but you can make your boobies bounce so nicely.
I know. But apparently it was the shorts that were the real problem.
You know what? Did you send in a picture of you in that thong onesie situation you got? Because that
But
might
that's kind of what the problem was.
Well, I'm just saying if they call me as a reference, I will tell them that they should let you have a job. So Stephen, why don't you break it down for us with what this new division is and what it is not?
All right, so I think if you've been following the sport for a while, it's kind of like 2015 bikini. So what it was closer to the beginning, not quite what it started at, but still a reasonable amount of muscularity, a reasonable amount of conditioning. They're changing the posing a little bit. Same back pose, back to the old stallion style front pose with the feet, kind of one foot in front of the other. So it it's similar but different. Um, Obviously, I think the big thing that everybody needs to keep in mind with this is that how it starts is probably not going to be how it ends. If you look at bikini, like literally this new division is similar to what bikini was kind of in that 1/3 of the way through time frame. So bikini obviously used to be something very different than what it is now, and it has evolved and grown. So I think, and we saw the same thing with wellness too, initially, right?
Right.
It started off as one thing, and then it's a different look and vibe now. And so you need to be aware that how this starts is probably not how it's going to finish. And this first year, there's still going to be a lot of questions. Everybody's going to be learning the division. and there's going to be a lot up in the air there, I think. And so after 2 or 3 years, it will probably be a bit more well defined. And I think it's going to be easier to really have more consistency, nailing down the look that the judges are looking for exactly. Because they're pretty much saying 2015 Ashley Kaltwasser. Like that's what they
Yeah.
want.
And so I have a question, like for your guys' opinion on this. I'm pulling up pictures. That's why I'm looking down at my phone. Because they specifically mentioned Ashley K, and no hate on her and her physique, right? But I think her butt, her glutes are so insanely just hers. You know what I mean? Like they are like,
That sounds like hate.
no, it's not hate.
You said no. You can't say no. It's like no offense and then say something completely offensive.
No, 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 it's not
With all due
offensive.
respect, that sounds like it licks a dog turd in the winter park.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say. It made me think of is like, why aren't we saying Courtney King at all when she was winning like the O around that time? I feel like Ashley's glutes are so big. They're so big. And like it's great what she's been able to achieve, but even that is still like intimidating to me when they're like, "Oh, well you need Ashley K's glutes, but don't have them too carved out." And I'm like, that's a really big ask. And so then it makes me I that was with a K at the end.
Yeah.
And so I was like when they specifically brought her up, I was like, that's interesting that they specifically want that because then they also shared this picture of her and they said, don't have chiseled abs. Okay, well, she does.
Right.
And things like that. So then that's why it made me wonder because if you look at Courtney in that same time frame, the big difference that I would say here that they're saying they don't want is the capped shoulders. And like Courtney definitely always had capped shoulders. And so I'm excited, like you said, like to see, we're not going to really know how this plays out until the shows start happening and we see what they're rewarding. But I mean, I know even just for like my roster, I had a bunch of people this morning in my DMs and in my emails that were like, what do I do? And like now they're very excited about that. And then Danica and I were even talking on Instagram this morning because we're both excited about it because I'm someone that with where bikini is now, I'm like, oh, well, I mean, quite frankly, people have been more open about the fact that in a lot of divisions, like gear is kind of expected, or like it's surprising when somebody is not. And I know I'm going to get flooded with a whole bunch of comments where people are like, you don't have to be on. And I know you don't have to be on it,
No, but you do.
but I
If
would.
you want to do well in bikini, you have to be.
Yes, 100%. And so that was why it was like, okay, well, this isn't for me anymore because quite frankly, I don't want to work to the point like it would have to completely take over my life. And so having something like this, it's like, oh, I might be able to not get laughed off stage if I went and did that. And it would be fun. I would have more fun with it. And so then it's curious for me, Danica, with your side, because like world champ competitor sitting over here, and you've accomplished so much in the sport. And then you got to a place where you too were like, I don't know. And then you're excited about this. So I'm excited. I want to hear your perspective on it too, and like why it calls to you.
Yeah, it was for the listeners. I'm just a little sick, so I don't smoke a pack a day. But I think that it was a little disheartening to do like the evolution of bikini, like compete. I don't remember when I won the Jordan Cup. I think it was like maybe 2014 or but it was around like exactly what they're saying around that time of like Courtney King and Ashley Kaltwasser and when Oxygen magazine is pretty big and we're looking for those model types, right? And that was when like I was in quote unquote maybe my prime in that kind of competitive year. But as I continued to compete, I noticed that like I needed to get bigger. I needed to gain more muscle. I needed like my glutes, what I thought were really good glutes, needed to like I needed to keep the glute density, but then also have them more,
Look at that, babe.
but also have them more striated or like have my hamstrings show more. So then the look just changed so much that I remember like my last show, which was now like 3 years ago, when Lana won her pro card
Mhm.
and at the Ben Weeder, and I just felt kind of defeated a little bit. Like I was like, okay, here's a turning point in my competitive career where in order for me to get to that next level, I'm going to have to make some pretty significant changes. Like I can gain muscle fairly decently, but what they're expecting is not what I used to bring to the stage all the time with the leanness too. Like there was just this like a lot of muscle but very lean too. And I remember my husband pointing it out too. He was like, so are you striving to be a figure competitor or like is it what exactly are you striving for now? Because it's changing a lot what I'm seeing. And he doesn't even follow the sport. He just kind of looks and he's like, man, I don't know about this. This doesn't really what happened to your bubble butt? Like what about the glutes and like the what happened? So it felt defeating just in a competitive way, knowing, okay, maybe I am personally falling out of the sport that I loved so much, like that this was something I like really, really enjoyed. And I was so excited to compete and like not for just for enjoyment. I love being on stage. I love doing like a presentation on stage. I love all of that part of it. I love the workload up into it. But then it was becoming like too intense that I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this anymore. And it made me feel defeated, if that makes sense. Then to have this come up, and I immediately messaged Paul and I was like, this is bringing me to Yorton Cup. Like, this is something that feels attainable and it feels that there doesn't have to be any PEDs involved. And it feels like I don't have to make it my everything. And it can bring back like that joy. And he was like, yeah, I totally agree. Like, there's going to be a lot of people that end up reaching out, old competitors maybe that used to compete, that had that, in that 2014, 2016 maybe time frame that are like, yeah, this is speaking to me again. This is fun again. And that doesn't mean that it can't still be fun. Like if people want to continue to build the delts and make sure that the tie-ins are crisp and clean and like build the density in their glutes, like that's wonderful for them. But I think there was a group of individuals that was like, oh man, like here's kind of like a turning point where I either have to make this like dedicate all of it in order to get to that position, or I need to like enhance myself a little bit in order to be competitive on that level for bikini specifically.
I wonder, I wish that they, like, as they have people register, I wish they could add in like a questionnaire of like, did you used to compete? Are you new to the sport? Are you returning? And like gather information about that because that's exactly been like, I haven't gotten as many messages from like my clients that had dreams of competing where they're like, oh, now I want to do that. It's more people who maybe haven't in a little bit and they're like, ooh, should I come back into this? And I mean, I had fought the ideas going back and forth about like, do I want to get back into competing? And then, I let it get into my head for like 2 weeks and then was like, no, never mind, I don't want to go that far. But then this comes up and I'm like, well, maybe it's not so crazy to consider that because it wouldn't have to be so crazy. But the way that they're describing it, I mean, it really does sound like it's going to be like a glute show, right? Like that. I feel like that was the main thing they said they were looking for. They want firm glutes. They don't want carved out tie-ins. They don't want carved out hammies. They don't want capped delts. And so it was a lot of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, glutes. Don't do this, don't do this, Ashley K's glutes. And like so I'm very curious to see when would be the first show that's going to have this.
I mean, I would assume it can't be the Arnold. Um, so it would have to be as local shows start. But I think here's the other thing you're missing is that prep practices were very different back then as well. There was nobody doing what we did or what we do in like 2014, 2015, maybe Lane, like people were just starting it and it's still evolved quite a bit since then. That look, if you ask me, that was a dehydrated competitor look for most of those girls. That's how you could be lean enough to, because they say no tie-ins, but if you look at the picture, Ashley K definitely has tie-ins. They're not completed. They're not underneath. You don't see the completeness of it. So they're there a bit. Like a lot of those women are still very lean.
Yeah.
And if you look back and you look at like the initial Sonia Gonzalez,
Hmm.
who was the first Bikini
Yeah.
Olympia, like that was a different look.
Hmm.
Um, so you can't get into this idea that it's what it was when bikini first started. It's past that a little bit, but it's also still lean.
It's
And
still
again, I
lean.
think this is where you're going to have some similarities to wellness. Is you're going to have a lot of people that come in and still don't meet conditioning criteria.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by that, but it's going to become more evident after the next couple of years. But we'll know how many people are coming back to competing based on like how many true novice competitors are doing that fitness model or fit model division and how many competitors they have total. Is it comparable to bikini or wellness or the other ones in terms of true novice competitors? Or is it a significant amount less and then open is busier and masters is busier? Because I
Yeah.
think that's what's really going to tell us how many people have returned to stage and competing versus, all right, now how many new people are truly coming in? Because this is another thing that's different with this one. If you're doing fit model, you cannot cross over. There are no crossovers. That's it. You're doing fit model. Like that's your show day.
Yeah. Even you mentioned um a name, but even like Nathalia Mello or Amanda Latona. Do you remember both of them? Like
Yeah.
they're, I find that their physiques were definitely like they had muscle on them, they were lean, like they had leanness to them, but then they had this like shape to them too that was just different.
Yeah.
Michelle Lewin was like my favorite competitor
Oh,
back in the day when I first
yes,
got in. Like
yes.
great physique, nothing super overbearing, like gorgeous, great balance, great shape. Just like Michelle Lewin was I think, my favorite physique from back in the day.
Yeah.
But, and Christina's gone on her phone already.
I have.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm looking everybody up and like, I mean, because I haven't looked at a lot of these people in so long or like where things were back then. And I mean, I know that, I can't believe it's been 7 years since the last time I was competed. Like that was competed the last time I competed. Um, and like even then, I probably could have gotten leaner to be more competitive at that point. But like, it is funny looking at this stuff and then comparing it to like the levels of leanness. Like, so I pulled up, this is blurry, but like,
Amanda Latona.
yeah. And so what's kind of exciting with the glutes, if this is really what they're looking for, is I feel like everybody's glutes look much more like bubbly is like the
Yeah. Or even, can
word
you
that comes to
see,
mind.
this is Nathalia.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's how yours looked at the Yorton. And I mean, I'm excited about this. I'm very excited to see it play out, and especially the level of conditioning because
Mm.
he said not the same, but we know, I mean, that's one thing. If you haven't competed before and you hear this and then you think, like, I remember my first season looking at stuff and especially with the tan because people never understand like what the tan does and stuff like that, but it changes things and how you look, and you look like a different human on stage and in pictures with the tan than you did 3 days beforehand before you had that done. Because even back then when I probably should have been down another like probably 3 to 4 pounds to be like really at the conditioning I needed to, I looked like Skeletor to most people, like, and like was very, very lean. And so I think that's one thing where like people are still probably going to have to get leaner than they think that they would need to in these situations. But maybe it just means they don't have to go quite as far with it. Um, But I mean, I'm very curious to see what they reward with this. And the killer thing is, I wish that they had announced it like a month ago or like 6 weeks ago or something to give more wiggle room because there aren't a ton of shows in like January and February, but they do happen. Like, isn't there, do they not still do,
It's pretty much just LA Fit Expo.
I was gonna say, like, when is the LA Fit Expo?
That's
That's
normally in January, but then
right.
it's LA Fit Expo typically, then Arnold, and then April.
I'm gonna look up and see if the Fit Expo, because he said it was gonna be at all 2025 NPC shows. Okay, so
Uh,
January 25 to 26.
if that's a USA Fit Games, then they're no longer an NPC IFBB show.
Oh, really?
Correct.
I haven't paid attention to the LA since I moved out of California. I haven't had anybody like try to go to that one.
I went once. I was like, okay. Um, but yeah,
I feel
I
like it
think
was a
one of the
big
other,
deal back then, right? Like,
yeah, that was 2019 when I went, so 5 years ago, which I was laughing. Paul was like 10 years ago, and then he started talking about like 2009. I was like, bro, that's 15 years ago.
it's like 1970 was still 30 years ago in my head.
Oh God, right? It's like,
You
oof.
guys remember Nicole Negrani?
I think
Nope.
You
name
don't remember Nicole Negrani? Um, so
Courtney King was like my favorite. That's why I'm like,
Yeah.
why can't we look like Courtney?
yeah, Nicole Negrani was, I think, honestly, oh goodness, she won a show, and I don't remember what one it was.
All I can find are Negronis when I
Yeah.
Google her.
Negrani.
It's just
Yeah.
cocktails.
So here's the other thing is the suits are going to be different. And
Yes.
so
Yeah, like solid too. Can you see
it,
that?
I
it's
wonder if
essentially
they'll,
they're saying off the rack. And I don't think that's even a good because when you look at the actual instructions, it says like no bling.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that means no crystallized suits. It says off the rack stuff with a V tapered bottom,
Well, so he said
which
more moderate.
if that's the case, suits are going to be way more affordable for people choosing to compete in this division versus what we're seeing currently in terms
Yeah.
of bikini competition suit and cost.
And I think
Well,
that's a deterring factor. I know for me personally, like I can't, I wouldn't be able to put on some of my suits that are there because it has like the three dangles on the side, and like that doesn't really work for now bikini shows. And I would have to spend 500 plus dollars on a suit if I wanted a legitimate, real quality suit. And that's just the suit.
yeah.
Like that is just a suit. Not to mention, like my shoes are probably not going to work out. And then the cost to kind of register. Maybe you don't have your membership card yet, the tanning, the hotel fee. Like it's a lot of money. So this will be a significant, like if I can go and buy something that doesn't cost $500, like I'd be more apt to do it.
You know how much it costs to register for the muscle contest show at the Fit Expo? How much do you think it is to register for a class?
Probably
Is it like,
200.
yeah, I was gonna say like 250.
Is that normal? Like it's 195 and that is insanity to me.
Hmm.
So normal cost for national level shows is 250 to 300 per class. So I think what we're typically seeing at local shows is anywhere from 125 to 150 per class still. So I mean, I don't think it's like that crazy far off, especially considering it's West Coast and California. Everything's a little bit more expensive over there, maybe.
That's ridiculous though. I went way back when, I feel like I'm aging myself, but it was like $70.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking, like 95.
And then like plus $10 every class. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Well,
I think this is genius because literally on Monday, when we had our call with Paul, he was talking about the decline in registrations and things like that that has been seen over the years.
but
And
we've been talking about that for like 2 years now, by the way.
oh yeah. But he pulled up his nifty little like for me
So the
like
spreadsheet, yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, ooh, and like took a screenshot because I love seeing it like visually. And he had mentioned, we're talking about like a $600 suit, which I mean, the last time I competed 7 years ago, mine, I always worked with Ravish Sands and my suit then was $600. And I've thought about selling that damn thing, and now I couldn't even use it for this one if I wanted to, because it's completely blinked out. I did it in Spider-Man colors, so it's like blue and red. I loved it. But so we're talking 600 for a suit, 200 for fucking registration. I had no idea.
We'll
Uh,
say 150 for a local show. Say
yeah, okay,
150, but
150.
it's 150 per class because remember, like Danica was saying, they used to give you a discount for
Not
crossovers and extra classes, but that's not a thing anymore.
wait, so if you do open and masters, are you paying that same amount for open and masters?
Yes. So, like for example, when I did my first show, what was it? 2019 or 2022, whatever it was. I think I did 5 classes, and it was like $600 ish total for my registrations and fees. And then Ben Weeder, I think it was 300 for my first class and another 250 after that. So it was still almost $600 just for 2 classes because that's technically a pro qualifier because I did classic and men's physique in that.
To all of my clients who are listening to this, I'm so sorry that I have said to register for more than one thing. I had no clue. Like I thought it was still the way it used to be. Um, so okay, so we're at 600 for a suit. 150 will be conservative. You're doing one thing. So we're at 750 already. You're going to drop at least $150 probably for your hair and makeup. So
Probably
now,
about another 150 for tan.
oh my God.
Like
Yes,
a 100 if you do it yourself on 120 for a DIY kit.
we're already at a grand, and you have not traveled to the venue. You have not potentially gotten a hotel room at the venue and things like that. And so I think it makes sense that like when we look at Paul's nifty little spreadsheet, like the one that kind of hung on was masters. And like what we're not seeing is like younger people, like fresher stuff coming into the sport. And that's because it's so freaking expensive. And so with this and the fact that you can get a cheaper suit, which I'm sure they're probably still, I wouldn't be surprised if they still ran like 150, $200, because what I'm curious about is like the different materials, how they're going to be with that too. Because
I think it's just a normal bikini. I think it's
oh,
literally
I
like
don't think
go
so.
to TJ Maxx and just get a normal bikini.
No way.
I think they'll probably
That's
put, they'll
they literally
probably
said
put
off the
something
rack.
on it.
Yeah, but
It says off the rack.
I think they mean like off the rack toxic angels and like because he said
Yeah,
moderate.
but you've been marketed to by them. They don't that they're I can I don't think that NPCIFBB is worried about toxic angels selling people their suits. I think they're
Oh,
more
no.
concerned with are people going to compete? Are they going to be interested in it? Is this going to be something that like people are going to be excited about? I don't think they care about it. So when they
We
say
were
off the rack, I
excited.
don't think they mean like off the rack for like one of the competition suit manufacturers. I think they mean off the rack because like men's physique, you can do that too. You can have whatever board shorts you want. I know that a lot of the guys are like getting specific board shorts that are made by people involved in the industry or whatever. But like you don't have to. I've worn Billabong shorts on stage so many times. And for my last show, I never like paid an exorbitant amount for like show shorts for any of that stuff.
Well, I think that's how it used to be. Like when I first started bikini ever, it was I asked a friend if I could borrow her bathing suit because I really liked that it was a scrunch butt. Like it was just a black suit that like looked really good and no one had bedazzle anything. Like it was just a regular tie suit.
But
That
that's a
was
good point. Is like I wonder if that would be allowed. Things like scrunch butt or the only cuts that they said you couldn't do was like the micro and the pro. You
They
know,
had Brazilian on there too. But here's the
well,
other
yeah, but
thing.
that's kind of
They
like
they
in
also specifically said that like don't pay attention to what the competition suit manufacturers are telling you for their cuts or this or that because none of that stuff was ever gone through them in the first place.
yeah. I have so many questions. I feel like that video came out and it just gave me a bunch of questions. Like we need like a Q&A session or something like that, especially for like these initial shows, right? Like I have a client now who was already planning on competing in April and we were going to go the bikini route and she's like, but maybe I should do this instead. And I mean, that's going to be like one of the first ones. Like I
Yeah,
wonder.
but that's what I mean when I said like nobody really knows yet.
Mm.
Like they can put that out there and we can say, okay, cool, 2015, 2014, 2016 bikini kind of standards and criteria. And you just want to kind of be in that era. You want to be in that time zone, so to speak. After that, like all the rest of that stuff is going to shake itself out throughout the first couple years of this new division being around. And so if you're like, oh man, I have to win, yada yada yada, whatever, then I don't know that I put that out there quite yet because
Yeah.
we really don't know exactly what they're looking for until the rewarding physiques shows have been going on. We see overall winners, and we have, I think, a little bit more concrete of an idea of exactly what it is they want.
It's not listed on the Arnold amateur one. I wonder when they're gonna add. I'm trying to figure out like a show that has it
I
for
mean, it just
registration.
got announced. It's not gonna, I don't think anybody's gonna have the websites updated yet or any of that kind of stuff, even if it's on there. I don't expect it to be at the Arnold though.
Yeah, it's not listed there. Well, because you would have to qualify for the
Right,
Arnold. You would
right.
have to have had it somewhere else already.
It's not going to start at big shows. It's going to start at local shows. Like that's how that's going to go, I think.
If
But
you
again, I think a
are,
lot of people are putting the cart before the horse or the cart before the horse right now. It's like the horse before the cart. No, wait, that's how it works. Um, like everybody's excited, which is great. And I think this is what the sport needed was something to kind of bring back a little bit more introductory division because, like we were talking about earlier, there are plenty of women who it doesn't matter how long you've been training, how good you've been training, how optimized it is, just not going to fit that bikini criteria look. You're not going to have the amount of glutes or, whatever it might be. And I think this is something that a lot of people have probably wanted. It'll be interesting to see, again, how that shapes out, how it comes together, and how popular it is. Because initially, bikini it was this at one point, but that was by far the most popular division
Yeah.
back in the day, bikini and men's physique,
mm,
prior to what this current standard is.
if you are a IFBB pro, can you only compete in IFBB level? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So if you're
Yeah,
an
you
IFBB,
can't do an NPC show if you're an IFBB pro.
Of
Right?
any
so
Plain and
kind.
simple.
what if the IFBB pro bikini competitor would like to try, they'd have to go down to like amateur and start from scratch again.
So normally you don't have to. Like if I'm an IFBB pro, I can change divisions. I could move from bikini to figure or women's physique if I wanted to,
In
right?
IFBB. So you could go from IFBB bikini to an IFBB figure show.
So like with
Right.
Erin Stern, when she went from figure, she just
That
showed
that and
up
now Aaron
with
Stern's a
I
different story. Aaron Stern gave up her pro card. She did
oh,
not have her IFBB pro
Oh,
card,
and
and that's why she had to requalify.
she requalified for her pro
Right.
card.
She had to earn pro status again because she had forfeited her IFBB pro card. That is why that is. But Urishna didn't have to requalify. She was a bikini pro. She moved over to wellness. Same with a lot of the other competitors that did that same thing. Allison Tetsu was like, I'm going to do wellness as an IFBB pro after bikini and then bikini again. And so once you earn your pro card status, those individuals, if they're wanting to go to a fit model, will most likely just automatically enter at the pro level for a fit model.
So that's interesting because I wonder if that will happen at all. If some IFBB pro bikini competitors will just go right into like set the standard for what a pro fit model is.
That's what I expect because I think that there are probably some that are retired and who haven't necessarily been involved in the sport as much, and maybe their training's not as crazy, but they still want it, they want an outlet for that. But they don't have the muscularity that bikini is looking for, and it'll be a very easy transition for them to get back into the sport. And I really think that this is a big part of what the new division is aimed towards,
mhm.
is those individuals who don't want as much muscle, who don't want to have to maybe get quite as lean or, you know, do some of the other things that those other divisions are requiring right now. And for them to still have a place in the sport where they can be competitive and be in the mix and, uh, you know, bring light to the sport.
Don't you almost wish though that like they had to start all over? Like I know for so if I wanted to, I have my what do I have? I have PA pro card and NABF pro card. if I wanted to now go into OCB, I couldn't just go into OCB Pro. I would have to start as an amateur in order to get, and I actually like that. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, make me earn it to get, I don't want to just fall into a pro division.
But wouldn't
Just,
that be like different though, because they're different federations?
yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I would want to, just because you got your pro card in one division, I feel like you should have to kind of, this is my own personal opinion. I feel like you should have to kind of earn your
Right.
pro status in another division.
I'm going to disagree because
Yeah.
one, you've already earned your pro card, and you sure you compete in a division to earn your pro card, but it's your pro card. It's the pro card. So I think, oh, I'm an most people be like, I'm an IFBB pro. They're not like, oh, I'm an IFBB XYZ pro, right? You're an IFBB pro. You compete in this division, but you can compete in other divisions. So you've still earned that. It's extremely difficult. Um, and I understand that there are definitely other leagues where if you don't compete every 2 years or 3 years, you lose your pro status and yada yada whatever. I actually dislike that because I think it dissuades people from taking more time away from the sport. If you really
Right.
need to grow, if say you're having a kid or something else is going on, you then have to force a competition within this time frame if you want to keep that card. I think that's silly. Um, so I like the idea of not having a expiration date on your pro card. If you've earned it, you've earned it. You can give it up. Sure, you can sacrifice it if that's what you want to do. But I don't think it takes anything away, especially because look at the difference of if I earned my pro card in men's physique in 2013 or 2014, I have zero chance at ever touching a top placing if I look the same as I did back then nowadays. The division has changed.
Yeah.
So, like now, if they create a division that is what this was, I think it's very fair to be like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to pop right in there.
I think what makes this kind of cool, like I get your point, Danica, and I see that, but in this situation, I like that if there is somebody who maybe has held on to it and hasn't been competing and they do want to hop back in, it gives us the opportunity right away to see what gets rewarded at the pro level, as opposed to us having to wait to
Until
like
someone gets
see
there.
those, right? But
Yeah.
didn't they say in the video that there won't be pro shows until 26? Or did I make that up?
Uh, I mean, I'll be honest. I watched most of the video and then I went on the website and read everything.
I think
Um,
towards the end, because it was like 5 or 6 minutes long. I think he said that this year it's going to be NPC and that they're going to be giving out pro cards, but that we're not going to see the pro level competitors until next year. So maybe that does leave some room in there where they don't want people just walking right back into it, or they're figuring out what they're going to reward.
so I think it could be because of that, but I also think of it in terms of if I have a pro show, I have to pay my pros. So one, I don't know how many pros are going to show up, especially for something new, which means I'm handing out money as a promoter that's going out without really knowing what's going to happen or how many pros are available or what that might mean. So I think that would be difficult, especially given that most promoters are already kind of have a good idea and set on what their budgets and everything look like for this upcoming year to ask them to add more shows to pay out more money for something that we're not quite so sure of yet, I think is tough. And so I think as they give out pro cards, typically as the division's newer, more pro cards are awarded, and they fill out and they have a little bit more pros that they can quote unquote count on to compete. That's why I think that makes sense.
Hmm. I'm excited.
Me
But I
too.
mean, that just means that you have to pay attention to overall winners
Right.
and see who's winning these NPC shows. What does that mean? Um, and what do they look like? What's the level of conditioning? Because you have a lot of girls coming in and women coming into NPC shows in bikini um, that are more muscular, more conditioned, all that kind of stuff already. So it'll be very interesting to see how they divide that line, where it's at. It's obviously it's going back to that other front pose, so it's going to be a different look from that aspect as well, um, and kind of what they're going for. And it's one of those things, like I said, you're not going to know until it starts shaking out.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it's great. I love that people are excited, and because I didn't expect a new one to come out, I was like, okay, well, I think that's why they're really starting to get more natural shows and promote that and push that side of the sport, um, in terms of what they're going after for the standard in bikini, particularly, and of course, male competitors as well that want to stay drug free but be more competitive. I was very surprised that they brought this new one out with having another Natural Pro qualifier this year in May at the IFBB Pittsburgh show, um, and then having Natural Pro shows for the divisions that currently existed already, and having just different options and having to qualify for Ben Weider at the end of the year, sort of making it like the natural world championship for pros, what if you will. So I didn't expect necessarily for them to uh, create a new division because I thought that was their kind of intent with that piece of it. But with them doing both, because it'll be interesting because I don't think there's going to be any for a fit model, like there's no need for a natural show for that. I don't think it's going to have the amount of muscularity conditioning to where people are going to struggle to fit criterion um, naturally. It might take them a little bit longer, but I think it's going to be very realistic for them.
Yeah. Are you excited, like as a coach, or what are your feelings towards
I
it
love it.
when you
So,
think
so
of like your competitors and everything like that?
the thing that I have the hardest time with, and I'm like, how do I, how do I word this appropriately, Dad?
Maybe you just
Um,
say it. Maybe it doesn't have to be tactful.
um, right. The thing that I have the most difficult time with is when somebody's been training for a long time, they've been competing for a while, and it's just like more muscle, more muscle, more muscle. I'm like, look, dude, realistically, I don't think that's in the cards for us. So this idea that if to compete and to do well, I have to have the conversation or say, look, we're just probably not going to make the progress that we need to for this naturally. I hate that conversation because it's not me saying you should do stuff, but inherently, I'm like, well, that's
Yeah.
kind of what you have to do if you want to do better. And I hate that. I hate that idea for myself. Um, like, no hate. If that's what you want to do, great. I'm all about if you're going to do drugs for a hobby, they should be fun drugs. That's just my 2 cents, you know?
Right.
Things that make you see colors and feel nice.
Right.
But but like with this, I'm super excited because I don't foresee myself ever having to have that conversation or make that statement with a competitor that competes in this division. And that I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's like the best part. Well, for me personally, because I'm 5'2". I'm not a big frame. And so to hear like you got to put on more muscle, you got to put on more muscle. I love me some muscle. I think muscle is wonderful, like all the things. But then I think long term, I'm like, oh goodness, like just more and more and more. Then like what happens after that? What if it doesn't feel comfortable in my frame? What if it doesn't feel comfortable then to like go for a run? Like what if that just doesn't feel comfortable and I have to push to meet criteria and then it turns into not being fun. Like then that's no longer enjoyable. Then I'm doing things that are kind of outside of my comfort zone in order to entertain a certain criteria that wasn't there prior to, like that just evolved and that I didn't really want to follow anyway. So that is such a good point. Absolutely.
Yo, how about this one too? I also think that it will change the way that people see themselves because, we talk a lot about mindset stuff. Like when you're constantly looking at people that are more muscular, leaner, competition level, whatever it might be, like you start to compare yourselves to that. That has an impact on kind of how we see ourselves mentally, our confidence, our self-worth, all these other things, body image. It has a huge impact on that. So I think having this other division that I think for the vast majority of people is much more reasonable for a natural physique, for being attainable, for being healthy. Um, that's going to hopefully do a lot of good for a lot of people that are in the sport that maybe do tend to have a difficult time kind of separating how should I look in competition, how should I look in normal life and off season, like not calling ourselves fluffy because we're 10, 15 pounds over stage weight, that drives me crazy. Like, oh, I'm like, no, no, dude, you're not. Go to the beach, go to the pool, go to Walmart, go to the mall, go anywhere, right? And just go look at what normal people look like. But because I think competition is one of those really intensive things that people really get gung-ho about, like when we start getting into it, then we start cultivating our feeds and that's all we see, and we lose sight of, okay, what is normal, because we're in this, and it's easy for us to forget that we're very niche in the bodybuilding world. Like that's a niche thing.
I mean, it's funny because it makes me think of like back to the time that they're referencing that they want to see more of, right? Like I remember like Kaylee Cuoco from like Big Bang Theory and like stuff like that. I used to look at her physique and be like, oh, like I want to like get there. Like she would say she did like yoga to get there and like stuff like that. But she had like shape and everything, but it wasn't like so far with stuff. And like now though, if you compared her then to like where things got for like what's like acceptable or like considered at like the same point, people would probably be saying that she was like too soft or like didn't have enough of a shape. And I mean, I know because just being in the industry and like surrounded by all of this so much, I'll look at things like on my own body and be like, oh, little baby shoulders. Like I don't have anything going on there. It looks like I don't lift. Like it looks like I don't do this and stuff. And then I'll talk to people who legitimately do not. And like they think I'm really muscular. Like, oh no, you should see my friends. Like, and what that looks like. But it did even get to a point with me where like I see like some competitors that are working still at like the NPC level to get to like the pro level. And because I mean, and this is just, I don't have as many pros like in my feed anymore. Like there's like favorites and stuff like that, but I don't follow it super extensively. But I feel like sometimes they carry it a little bit different. But I'll see some people who are like in their off seasons and like building to get there, where like I don't want to look like that all the time. Like I don't want to necessarily have these gigantic like shoulders and stuff like that that make me feel uncomfortable in like some outfits or stuff, or like where I just feel like it overpowers or something. And so what I'm really hoping this is able to stay as it is like in that position, right? Like my fear for it would be that maybe people who haven't been able to get where they want to be, who have been building to the current bikini standard, and maybe they've just been just on the outskirts or whatever, if they show up and then they're getting rewarded right away, and then it's like, oh, okay, so it's just the people who are a couple of percentage points behind like the current bikini, but we're still looking at essentially the same exact frame, but it's like maybe slightly less conditioned or it's slightly less there. I hope it really stays where they talk about like the magazine covers and things and what that looked like, because I don't even like to, I haven't looked at a magazine, like a fitness magazine in so long, but I feel like
They don't
what
make them anymore.
do they not? That's what I was thinking.
I mean,
Why is
they
that?
make some, but let's be real, print is dead.
Right. And so like the covers of like Shape magazine or like Women's Health and things like that, where it very much was somebody who wasn't all the way bodybuilding. Like part of me kind of hopes it doesn't scream bodybuilding the way that now, because the bikini now really could have been figure competitors a couple of years ago, just in a different suit.
1,000%. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
Like go
And
look at
that
when
was
Aaron
scary.
Stern won Figure Olympia.
Yeah. And figure was like the, whoa, I'm not one of those. Like that's a lot of muscle. And like now that's exactly what's expected. And these girls, I mean, we've seen it where you can cross over at the same show and win in bikini and then turn around and win in figure. And all you're doing is different posing. And so I'm just really hoping there is like that delineation and it is different. And I think that will truly pull in more people who are excited about it. And like selfishly, it makes me think of things like the transformation challenge. We have had people do our transformation challenges who at the end look pretty fucking awesome. And like maybe they could then, not saying they should roll immediately from that, like into a prep or something, but maybe that becomes a bit more where they're like, okay, I went through this thing that was kind of like a prep. I got to this place. I'm a bit more excited to be a part of this world and not feel like there's that bigger like barrier of entry and things like that.
Yeah. The evolution is I was just thinking when you mentioned, did you mention a name? Or you were talking about like magazines too, but and how figure has changed. But if I were to put my Yorton Cup World Championship winning physique on an NPC stage right now, I'd be like, I'm sorry, no. Like, no, you don't count in this at all, which is bonkers to me. But then I also, another point that you made, Stephen and Christina, about um, the way that we view ourselves or like what we're trying to attain in order to kind of fit, I guess, the right way and how that shifts our perspective of ourselves, our internal dialogue of ourselves, our self-confidence. But thinking like I'm not muscular enough or I must not be lean enough because I can't see like if you can see like a quad sweep and you're strong and like you have shape to your muscles, but you can't see your tie-in, does that make you not good enough? Like, but I'm sure there's been many times I'm like, I can't, like I just can't. There's no tie-in showing. But now to know that like that doesn't have to be there and that's actually not supposed to be there is exciting. Like that means, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have to go for a look that actually I don't really vibe that well with any longer. And I can keep true to that. Like I don't have to kind of sacrifice a look that I wanted to maintain for myself just because in order to go into a sport that I really do enjoy, I have to kind of take my own visual, I guess, goal away
Yeah.
because that's part of the sport too, obviously, is to appease what they're looking for. I get that. But sometimes I think there probably are some people that are going after a look that maybe doesn't align well with what they actually would want outside of that sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one because I think that, for what I've seen with some of my clients who no longer compete, is that's exactly what it is. Hey, you know what? Like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I really liked bikini. I was into it. It's just kind of grown into something. I don't think I'll do it again for bikini. It's not me. It's not going to be realistic. It's not how I want to look. And like for me, I really like how I look, except for my nipples. I really love my physique, like how I look, my level of muscularity, how my body works, all that kind of stuff. Which makes sense because when I first got into bodybuilding, it was like 2013 when men's physique was still really new. And I kind of fit that mold pretty well. I was like, oh yeah, this looks good to me. This is what I find attractive for myself and what I like for me. But like the idea of me trying to fit what men's physique top level pros are now, I wouldn't want it. It's not for me. Um, and I think that having more options for people to say, you know what, this really fits my values better, or it fits my lifestyle better, or it just fits how I want to see myself better. I think that's a good thing.
Do you think they would do something similar for men?
So I think there's a big difference, socially speaking, in terms of men doing things to build more muscle versus women doing things to build more muscle. So I don't know that it's on the radar for men. Plus, the men are like they're still very popular in the sport. There's still a lot of guys competing. Classic physique really blew the sport up, especially with God, what's his name? Um, Not Chris Hemsworth. That's the actor. The guy
Bumstead?
that just retired.
Chris Bumstead.
That guy, Chris Bumstead. Like he brought a ton of exposure to the sport. So I think the men are still doing really well. I think if there's a point where that starts to dip, that's when they possibly think about it. But I don't think it's on the radar right now.
Yeah.
Plus now with the natural shows for guys, it kind of it makes a pretty big delineation and separation there.
Yeah. Danica, do you think you'll hop into something?
I do. Like I feel more I started doing I really wanted to do the Arnold and I had told Paul and we started just to do like a building phase and I felt really good. And then I again looked at shows and I just felt really defeated. Like I was like, what am I doing again? Like I'm a pretty competitive person. And so I was like, I don't know if this is realistic for me any longer. Like I see who's winning and I just don't know. Not that I like don't have confidence in myself because I do, but I don't know. It was kind of like I don't know if I could run a marathon tomorrow. Like that's how it felt. Like I just didn't have what it was going to take. So I said, I'm good. Like I built my food up. I'm in a cozy little place. Like I got a great strength training program. I'm good. And maybe this is my end. Like maybe. And then this came and I was like, okay, maybe not. Like maybe. And I immediately was like, hi, Paul, look at this. Taking me back to Yorton Cup. Like realistically speaking, would I be able to? Like, what is the criteria and what would I need to work on? And to have him be very reassuring and be like, listen, you could easily slide into this. Like, you have the muscle, you have the shape, like this is in your wheelhouse. That feels really good. Like to know that if I had said, can I do a national show as a bikini competitor? I don't think he'd be like, yeah, this is in your wheelhouse. Like just not it'd take a lot of work and it'd take probably a lot of other stuff. So
Let me stop you there because I want to interject here with something.
yeah,
You're like, it's not that I don't have confidence. I think there's a very big difference between confidence and unfounded confidence. I think a lot of people tend not to be quite honest with themselves on things. And so, like, if you've been doing this whole weightlifting, being fitness, like, this is obviously your lifestyle and how you make a living, and you haven't built enough muscle by now in the journey, like, if you've been doing this over a decade and they're still like, yeah, we probably want to see a significant amount more muscle in your glutes or here or there, like I think it's being realistic with yourself and saying, you know what, if this is I want to stay as a natural athlete, that's not I just don't fit that. That's not me.
yeah,
I think there's this weird thing, and fucking all right, don't everybody cancel me at once. Like there's this weird fucking thing about people not wanting to accept truth as truth in general nowadays. Like they don't want to accept fact as fact. Like, hey, this is a fact might change over time. Maybe data changes or whatever. But like the fact is, if I've been training for 15 years of my life and training hard and doing bodybuilding, and I still am fucking 30 pounds under a weight cutoff for my weight cap, fucking I ain't happening naturally, dog. And so I think that there's this really important thing to recognize that like if you've been doing this for a long time, you should have a pretty good idea of whether or not it's realistic for you to really build the muscle to go up a division or not. And I think for you, you absolutely have the ability to sit back and to take an objective stance on your physique and where it's at, where the standard is at on other divisions, and be honest with yourself about that. And I think that's a big difference.
I don't know if that was a compliment or
It
calling
is a
me
compliment.
or okay.
Yes.
I didn't know how to take that one, but no,
But that speaks to
that
my
was
point
a
though,
that's a
because
good point though.
you're like, oh, was that a dig? It's like, why would it be a dig
No, it's
if
not a bit.
genetically you've been busting your ass and doing all the right things to get the absolute maximum out of what you can do naturally? That's a fucking cool thing.
Oh yeah, like to be, yes, and to just have realistic expectations and also know in order to get to a certain place, I would have to do something that I don't feel comfortable with. And I'm not going to like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not who I am. So, right, I realistically like had it in my mind. I had a truthful conversation with myself and said, maybe not, maybe no, this isn't for me, and that's okay. And to step back. This coming into play gave me that reignition of like, oh, okay, what this is realistic for me. Like this is something I can get down with. I don't have to sacrifice so much for this. Like this is cool. So yes, you're right, Stephen. And to answer your question, Christina, it is the first time that in a long time that I have felt excitement to compete, possibly because all the other times I was like, oh, I love this stage. I have so much fun. I love this stage. And then I would think, oh man, like, what's the criteria again? Who have been the top competitors lately? and what are they awarding? And then there'd be like a little bit of like, okay, okay, like I don't know about it. But this time around, it was just like, just as it was in the beginning when I first started, it was like, oh, I could do this. Like, I can do this. I got this. Without, of course, being like challenging yourself. And obviously, you would go through a prep and everything, and you'd have to do the work to be there. But it wouldn't be questioning of like things or pushing to extremes or taking things that I wouldn't want to do. It just is more exciting this time.
Yeah. I mean, I've been super distracted. I'm watching a dog almost jump over somebody's fence out my window. And he's gonna be successful soon. And it's freaking me out. I'd be so mad if I was these people's neighbors. Um, I keep looking up and I'm like, now's the time. I wanted to compete again because for like I haven't in so long, and then finally felt like I was getting back to a place where it would be fun again, and then like had the same thing where I was looking at stuff and was like, I mean, I've always been comfortable with the idea of competing for me and not like I need a pro card. Like that's what I'm going for. I won't be happy if I don't do that. Like I used to get very annoyed when people would get you would hear people talk about like bucket list competitors and stuff, and they'd be like, ew, they shouldn't be doing this. Stay off of our stage or whatever. And I want to be like, screw you, man. Like if I just want to go do a show because I like to push myself to limits and like reveal the work I've done in this way. Like I very much enjoyed the 4 shows that I did. I did the Arnold Amateur like a big dummy as my 3rd show, like 3 months after my first ever show. And that experience was huge. Like I loved that. I have like the coolest pictures. I loved being a part of it. And then, went and had 2 more kids and like all this stuff. And so I have felt very disconnected from the sport, even like as a coach, like being away from it. But there was always like I watched it change and was like, well, I mean, I'm sitting here next to my collection of 2nd place trophies over here. So like that's been my vibe in the NPC. And like that's fine. But as things continued to change, it was like, okay, well, if I sign up for one of these, I'm going to be lucky if I come home with another 2nd place trophy, because the way that things grew so freaking fast, like with what Steven was saying about you, Danica, it's not a thing at you. If anything, it's just, it shines even more light on how fast shit changed. And like, quite frankly, it's unattainable like for the majority of people, right? Like we have people who are just naturally and genetically gifted who can get away with it naturally. But for the most part, you're going to need some support, like to keep up with some of those changes that are happening so very fast, unless you're going to take huge amounts of time away and things.
By the way, it's not that fast. They've been around for like over a decade at this point. I think we're just old, so we don't recognize that it's been as long as it has.
I feel like the changes over the last like 7 years to look at
7 years is a long time, bruh.
Yeah, but to see who would have been competitive that, like Ashley Kay, if you put her and the standard they're talking about then and then compared her to her now, she would
Oh,
not
she'd be last.
do well. Right. And like that's crazy, right? And so like I feel the same way where it's like it's kind of exciting to think that there might be a place in it for me again to like be able to enjoy that like with my clients and like do it again and like feel that kind of stuff. It's exciting to maybe have like another entry back into it without having to go crazy with stuff I don't want to be a part of.
And I think here's another idea. Like if we go back, I'll take when I started competing, for example. I think my first couple shows, there were about 20 people per class in my class, just my one class for men's physique. My second year competing, I remember those were just local shows. They weren't national qualifiers. So my second year, I went to a national qualifier. We had like 51 guys in the class, or 48 or something. Almost 50 dudes in one class. So
Yeah.
I got like middle ground. I got like 28th. I was like, hell yeah. That was probably one of the more fun shows I had that I did. And it was like it's so different. Like you got 28th, Stephen. I was like, yeah, but I got 28th out of like 48.
Right.
That's a lot different than getting 4th out of 5. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I think the other thing that will happen is if this, I think, has a desired intention, those will be very popular classes with a lot of people competing in them. And I think that will bring a different kind of vibe to it back again in terms of like more people enjoying it. And like if you got a trophy or a medal or something in those classes and you had 30, 40 people in there, you're like, oh, because I've been to national shows with less than 5 people in classes.
I know, which is so
And
crazy.
like that's insane.
I started my first two shows that I had done were muscle contest in Southern California, and they were huge, like gigantic. And those were just like your run-of-the-mill muscle contest shows. Because I mean, with muscle contest, you can find a show almost every weekend. I feel like when you're looking for stuff on their schedule, there's so many. And my first one was the Ferrigno. I don't even know if they do that anymore. It was like the Ferrigno Classic. It's the same guy who does the Tahoe show, the same promoters. Um, and that one, I had like 20 to 30 people in my class, and I'm 5'7". And so getting like the taller groups too, like that's something I've watched over time. And that's something that's always been intimidating as well, is that like trying to put on muscle when you get compared to like someone who's 5'2" and like 5'7", and trying to build things up is a bitch. Like I feel like one of those like wavy car salesman guys, like, you know, trying to put stuff on. So
Yeah, and I honestly I don't know that the local classes will ever be that big again because it used to be like okay, you had bikini, figure, and whatever. But now like you have bikini, you have well. So I do think that there's still those will probably never be as big as bikini was initially. Back when the standard was what we're talking about for the fit model. But I mean, it would be cool to see shows with larger classes again. Like that would be really, really cool.
yeah, I think it would make it more fun, like you were saying, because like having competitors go up and then, they message afterwards. It's like, well, I got third. And I'm like, that's amazing. Out of how many? And they're like, four. Like, I mean, it's still great. Like, but it like when you don't have as many people there, it definitely gives a different vibe. And I mean, hearing the same thing with like national shows. I mean, it's crazy how much they've fallen off. And what was it, like 150 bikini competitors or something at
I think
nationals?
170 for nationals this other weekend this year,
Gosh,
which
remember
I
when,
think is the first year that's been under 200 total.
right?
That's wild. At the first national, I did the nationals, and I think it was at Fort Lauderdale.
That
And I
was back in when
think,
it was still in Miami.
yes, there were 80 competitors in my class.
Yeah, there used to be like that many for like all of the classes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's sad.
I
Maybe
mean,
this will be it though. This is also one other thing that I think is going to be interesting is how many people go to these. Like how many people are going to be signing up for it and navigating that. Like, is this going to be a really because it is more attainable from in my personal opinion, I find it to be more attainable. And so are there going to be so many more competitors now?
so I think the other difference here is going to be the landscape of fitness and female physiques in general in society has changed quite a bit since the early 2000s as well. And so now it's much more common for women to be in the gym, to be in the free weight section, to be lifting, to be trying to put on muscle, to be doing things like hip thrusts and growing glutes. Like that's kind of, the fit is in, so to speak, in terms of attractiveness and socially. So I think that it's going to be a lot easier for a lot of women to transition into the idea of competing and stepping on stage competitively for this, versus where I think prior to that, the look, in the early 2000s for what was in, I remember people talking about, oh yeah, her butt's so flat and tiny. I was like, what? Like now you hear somebody say that, like, oh yeah, that's what they used to like. And I was like, well, that ain't it anymore, right? I mean, I'm sure obviously some people do, but like overall, everybody's like, yeah, I want the girl with the big old booty.
Yeah.
And girls are
It
like, I want the guy with the big old booty.
it'll be nice too to hear. Well, I know speaking to people who want to compete, a lot of the times I'll have to be like, okay, we have to put on a lot of size in order to do this. And to not have to say that like will feel good as a coach. I mean, unless they want to put on a lot of size and that those are their specific goals. But I did find that many first-time competitors or people who are returning, my conversation has absolutely changed with them. And to have them, and you said that, like, it's almost like, okay, let me just be very honest with you and set the realistic expectations with you now. And I'm not trying to burst your bubble at all. I'm just being very honest with you that things are changing and you're going to have to put in a lot more work than you. We can't just start prep next week. It's not going to
Not
work
only
like
just work, but time too, because building
time.
muscle
Yeah,
takes time. And I think
absolutely.
for a lot of people, when I talk to them, that's something that maybe a lot of them aren't interested in. And
Mm,
so I'm like, cool, well, we can still get on stage, we can still do this, but it'll affect the competitiveness of the physique that we bring in terms of what that standard is right now, because they're going to want to see more. And so if being competitive is super important to you, which not to everybody it is, we kind of touched on that. But if it is, then that's a truth that we have to kind of talk about. Because I'd rather be the guy that was just a bastard up front than the guy that was a bastard at the end and took your money.
Yeah.
Like, because now I'm double bastarded.
right. Absolutely agree.
That's just an excessive level of bastardness.
That's a little aggressive.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and I'm in agreement that I think this is going to be a lot more realistic for a lot of people to kind of jump into as they're getting their feet wet. And I think that's great for a couple of reasons. One, they can continue to compete in that category and stay there and stay at that level of muscularity, body composition, whatever it might make sense to them. Or if they realize that they love it and they've, been in it for a while, then they can continue to try and go up to the next category in terms of muscularity. And they have a little bit more, I think, experience in the sport, what it means, what it is, what it entails, versus I think a lot of people who just see the stage pictures right now, they're like, oh, I want to do that. Um, let's go. But they're not really ready for what the actuality of that is yet.
Yeah.
So much to think about. There's so much. I love it. I honestly looked at the nifty little spreadsheet and I was like, man, what does this mean for like those of us who do this for a living and everything? And then they come out with this new thing and it's like, oh, that's exciting. Like to have stuff revitalized and have something fresh. And I think it's always nice to see when, as an industry, they're finding a way to have it grow and have it be more welcoming and things like that. Like that makes me happy to be a part of it, like in general, that it is more like open arms as opposed to, no, if you want to be this, you got to grow, like you got to get bigger, bigger, bigger. And so it's cool to see that they're stretching like what they want to be a part of and what they want to reward and stuff like that and find a way to make it accessible.
Love it. All right, Danica's out of time. We gotta go.
We do. I gotta pee. So
She's gotta go smoke a pack.
too much water. Yeah. She
So
secretly has got Jones in. And for what it's worth, we told her she didn't have to do this with that voice, but she wanted to hang out. So
totally fine. I needed it.
we're not trying to put her in pain or anything. Okay, you go get your girls. And I think the next time we talk to you guys, it'll be a whole new year after this. So
Blech.
talk to you next year.
Yes, talk to you next year.